Welcome to another Big Train Tour at the Colorado Railroad Museum. This month, we'll be taking a look at a standard gauge railroad business car dating from the mid-1880s. Built for a subsidiary that later merged with the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad, and renumbered several times during its service life, the car continued in operation for some 75 years, until the advent of Amtrak. Today, Burlington Business Car number 96 is proudly displayed at the museum with a rich history to share. Hi, I'm Paul Hammond, Executive Director of the Colorado Railroad Museum. Today we'll be exploring the history of an executive business car which, starting in the mid-1880s, served as a traveling office and home away from home for railroad officials on one of the major railroads serving the Centennial State. Come join me now as we take a look at the history of this Colorado classic, its remodeling and renumberings over the years, and how it eventually ended up on display in Golden. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad had a long and proud history. Its earliest predecessor, the Aurora Branch Railroad, was chartered in 1848 and built from Aurora to what is now West Chicago, with early trains then utilizing the pioneering Galena and Chicago Union Railroad's tracks east from there into Chicago. A new wholly owned line was completed in 1864, bypassing the Galena trackage. After several consolidations, the growing railroad was renamed the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy in 1856, and shortly reached its two other namesake cities, Burlington, Iowa, and Quincy, Illinois. In 1868, following the conclusion of the Civil War, the railroad completed bridges over the Mississippi River at both Burlington and Quincy, providing through connections with the Burlington and Missouri River Railroad in Iowa and the Hannibal and St. Joseph Railroad in Missouri. As an aside to our story, but worthy of note regardless, the Hannibal and St. Joseph played an outsized role in the early transport of mail in the West. The railroad in 1860 would carry the mail to the short-lived but famous Pony Express upon reaching the Missouri River at St. Joseph, Missouri. And in 1862, the first railway post office was inaugurated on the Hannibal and St. Joseph to sort mail on its trains as they made their way across Missouri. The Burlington and Missouri River Railroad continued building west into Nebraska as a separate company, reaching Council Bluffs and a connection with the Union Pacific and America's first transcontinental railroad by the end of 1869. The Burlington and Missouri continued on to Lincoln, the newly designated capital of Nebraska, in 1870, and to Kearney by 1872. Shortly after its Missouri River Bridge at Plattsmouth, Nebraska was completed in 1880, the Burlington and Missouri River Railroad was purchased by the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, along with the pioneering Hannibal and St. Joseph. The Burlington route reached all the way from Chicago to Denver just 2 years later. Meanwhile, another affiliated line, the Chicago, Burlington, and Northern, was planned to run north and west from Aurora, Illinois to the Mississippi River, then heading north along its east bank through Wisconsin and to Minnesota's Twin Cities. This Burlington route subsidiary would connect with two transcontinental railroad lines reaching to the Pacific Northwest, the Great Northern and the Northern Pacific. It's also where the story of our subject railroad car begins. The Burlington route's rapid expansion after the American Civil War was based upon sound financial management dominated by financier John Murray Forbes of Boston. Charles Perkins, who became the railroad's president in 1881, was a powerful administrator who forged a comprehensive system out of what were previously loosely held affiliates. Perkins would virtually triple the size of the Burlington route during his presidency, which spanned 20 years. The Burlington began pursuit of a railroad line from Chicago to St. Paul, Minnesota, as early as 1882. The company leased trackage between St. Paul and Minneapolis, which became the northern terminus of this new railroad from Illinois. With the new railroad completed between northwestern Illinois and the Twin Cities by 1886, Chicago, Burlington, and Northern President Albert Tusselin and Vice President George Harris needed a traveling office and home away from home. The Chicago, Burlington, and Northern was just being completed when a beautifully finished and comfortably outfitted business or office car, B99, joined its fleet in 1886. The car's builder, Barney and Smith Car Company of Dayton, Ohio, boasted a long and proud history. The company started in 1849 via a partnership first known as the Dayton Car Works, building horse-drawn streetcars. Barney and Smith built its first sleeping cars in 1855, and just 4 years later, none other than George M. Pullman was ordering sleeping cars from the company. Pullman would not begin building railroad cars of his own until 1870. The Civil War pushed numerous car-building contracts towards Barney and Smith, and the company grew through the 1860s. The post-Civil War years were prosperous for the car builder, with large contracts coming in and the car works running at capacity. The 1873 financial panic stopped virtually all investment in railroad construction, and Barney and Smith cut wages and laid off workers for a time. As it recovered from this setback, the company resumed building horse cars for local street railways, expanded its sleeping car business, and entered the new narrow-gauge market. Colorado's 3-foot gauge Denver, South Park, and Pacific Railroad received a number of boxcars and flat cars from Barney and Smith, along with 3 elegant new passenger coaches. The company was reportedly the largest car builder in the nation until Pullman opened its massive plant south of Chicago in 1881. In that year, Barney and Smith employed more than 1,500 workers. The company's craftsmanship was superb and its reputation impeccable. Thus, it's no surprise that office car number B99, as it was first known on the Chicago, Burlington, and Northern, was beautiful inside and out when it was delivered in 1886. Measuring just shy of 61 feet in length, the car, like other similar business cars from the era, had railed open observation platforms at both ends to begin with. Although no photographs of the car have surfaced from its early years, the original English quarter-sawn oak woodwork found in the car's hallways and staterooms dates from the beginning, according to railroad records. Images taken from other private railroad cars built around this same time offer a glimpse of what the car might have looked like in its earliest years. During the late 1880s, President Perkins of the Burlington route was likely a frequent visitor and undoubtedly an occasional guest aboard the car. Although the Northern was a separate railroad corporately, there were strong financial ties between these two railroads with Burlington in their names. The line to Minneapolis did not prove as profitable as expected, and this apparently led to a number of differences of opinion between Perkins, representing the larger Burlington route, and the smaller railroad's management. The line's executives, Tussalan and Harris, were interested in aggressively building the Northern's traffic, sometimes getting Perkins' attention in the process, because proposed rate cuts could cause retaliation by railroads that Burlington considered friendly. With the 1889 death of Tussalan, Harris moved into more important roles, president of the Northern and general assistant to President Perkins for the larger Burlington system. Car B99 continued to provide Harris with his traveling office, and it's believed that the car was also still used occasionally by Perkins, who lived with his family in Burlington, Iowa, throughout his Burlington presidency. Perkins would later gain fame when his family donated his 480-acre ranch near Colorado Springs to become the renowned Garden of the Gods. Around 1895, office car B99 was assigned a new number, 45. Within just a few years, it was relettered for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, and given yet another new number, 90. This minor change signaled a much larger transformation. The Burlington route would formally absorb the Chicago, Burlington, Northern in 1899, with the smaller line's separate identity being completely erased in the process. By 1900, the Burlington route stretched from Chicago to Denver and as far west as Billings, Montana, and north to the Twin Cities, altogether 8,000 miles of railroad. However, Burlington President Perkins strongly believed his railroad needed to be part of a larger and more powerful transcontinental system. But building west to the Pacific was out of the question by this time. Through a carefully engineered deal, James J. Hill's Great Northern Railway, in conjunction with the Northern Pacific Railway, by 1900 purchased nearly 100% of Burlington's stock through a holding company known as Northern Securities. Unfortunately, the deal was struck down as illegal under the federal Sherman Antitrust Act. This did not change the fact that Hill already owned all three railroads. It simply meant he was forced to manage each railroad independent from the others. After Perkins retired from the Burlington in 1901, a New York-based management team took over. The railroad continued its expansion south into Texas via the early 20th century addition of its Colorado and Southern and Fort Worth and Denver subsidiaries, growing into a 12,000-mile railroad system in the process. Business car number 90 also experienced changes during this time, with a major overhaul in 1906 being undertaken in the Burlington's Aurora, Illinois shops. Dating back to 1855, these shops were capable of repairing, as well as constructing from the ground up, locomotives, freight cars, and passenger cars. During its remodeling, our subject business car saw extensive modifications to its main public spaces. Most noticeably, showy new Honduran mahogany woodwork was installed in the dining and observation rooms by skilled craftspersons. Although detailed records are not known to survive documenting other alterations made during the rebuilding, electricity was finding its way aboard the finest railroad equipment around this time. Changes to the car's mechanical, lighting, and ventilation systems likely were undertaken, although some accounts suggest Car 96 did not receive electric lights until 1915. It almost certainly lost its second end platform at this time, too, replaced by a vestibule with an ice-cooled refrigeration compartment. The rebuilt and refreshed officer's car emerged from the Aurora shops with a new number, 96, which it would hold for the remainder of its service life. Business or office cars, created for the use of railroad executives, were the equivalent of traveling on today's private jets. Used for more than just transportation, these rolling offices served as conference room, restaurant, living quarters for an executive and his crew, and perhaps most importantly, a projection of power when meeting with executives from other railroads and prospective customers. The all-male crew on a railroad business car had one purpose: to make the executive's job as easy as possible while traveling. This started with the secretary, who would notify the chef and porter so that they could arrange for needed supplies for the next trip. The secretary would then begin working to schedule meetings desired by the executive, perhaps with local superintendents, dispatchers, and customers along the planned route. While traveling, the secretary kept the executive organized and accompanied him to all meetings. He took careful notes, which were then transcribed at the onboard typewriter, located in the dining room's roll-top desk. The cook catered to the executive's tastes and any dietary needs, preparing exquisite meals such as grilled lamb, stuffed pork chops, and roasted Cornish game hens for business occasions, and simpler fare at other times. Keeping the business car in tip-top shape was the porter's main responsibility. In addition to housekeeping, the porter would also care for Car 96's dining room inventory. He'd make sure chipped china was replaced, all table settings and woodwork remained highly polished, and linens were laundered, starched, and impeccably pressed. He also served as waiter for the executive and his dining room guests. While we know almost nothing about the car's onboard staffers, we can deduce that the secretary was likely of white or European origin, while the cook and porter were likely black or African American. We would love to view photographs of these crew members to confirm this supposition, which is based on the car's long service in the years following the Civil War, the Burlington's Chicago connections, and typical employment practices of the time. Entering from the rear railed open observation platform, local superintendents, employees, shippers, and civic leaders would join the executive for meetings in the comfort of the main observation room or parlor. Designed to impress, this space features meticulously crafted and polished woodwork, intricate ceiling fixtures, and luxurious furniture one might expect to find in an executive's office or conference room. In the center of the car are two staterooms, located off the main hallway and featuring wood inlays, intricate stained glass clerestory windows, and sumptuous upholstered seats. Each stateroom has its own washroom facilities, and a retractable bed cover kept cinders and other outside contaminants from falling on the executive during the night. The magnificently decorated dining room features a table and chairs for 6, along with a built-in buffet and glassware cabinet. Used for entertaining guests as well as serving everyday meals, the dining room also keeps work in mind. A roll-top desk and bookcase are tucked in the corner, complete with typewriter and communications equipment. Meal preparation is designed to take place near the front of the car, in the small, early 1900s state-of-the-art stainless steel galley with range, oven, pantry, and refrigeration cabinet. Next to the kitchen, a compact crew quarters features a space that could be made up for daytime sitting or nighttime sleeping, along with a wash basin shared by the car's porter and chef. Beginning in the early 20th century, all-steel construction became standard for railroad passenger equipment in the United States. For older cars that remained in service, various upgrades helped with safety, and cosmetic modernization measures were also undertaken. For Business Car 96, a steel underframe was added in 1917, strengthening its original all-wood structure. The car was steel-sheathed sometime in the early 1920s, and more modern cast steel trucks or wheelsets replaced older wood-beam models around this same time. A shower was added to the car's main restroom sometime during the 1920s. The car was briefly assigned to the McCook, Nebraska Motive Power Department. Then, starting in 1930, it was assigned to the general manager of Burlington Lines East, meaning those east of the Missouri River, until 1945. Ice air conditioning was added in the mid-1930s, with air being blown over large blocks of ice inserted into boxes under the car, and the cool air then piped into the car. In the mid-1950s, an oil-fired layover heating system replaced an earlier coal-fired Baker heater. In 1958, the car received thermopane sealed windows, and these turned out to be number 96's final improvement under Burlington ownership. From the end of World War II in 1945 until its final retirement in 1959, number 96's age was showing. It became a spare or extra business car, for use by railroad officials who didn't have their own business car assigned. Ingloriously, it was a small kitchen fire that determined the car's final fate. Burlington Business Car 96 was placed in storage at the company's Aurora shops with an uncertain future. Luckily for Car 96, then president of the Burlington, Harry C. Murphy, arranged for the car to be sold to the Denver-based Intermountain chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. Ownership was ceremonially transferred on February 3, 1962, at Denver Union Station. Former Burlington Business Car 96, relettered for Intermountain Chapter NRHS, spent the next 10 years in excursion service. Over the course of this service, it would travel 25,000 miles over the rails of 6 different U.S. railroads. For its very first trip, in March 1962, the car operated on the Rio Grande Ski Train from Denver to Winter Park and return. Car number 96 took part in NRHS national conventions in 1963, based in Denver, and also again in 1969. The following year, when Denver commemorated the centennial of railroad service in June 1970, Car 96 was once again present. In 1970, Car 96 took its final long excursion, a 3.5-day journey to Portland, Oregon from Denver. The next year, it operated on the very last Santa Fe passenger train between Denver and La Junta, on April 30th. The newly created National Railroad Passenger Corporation, known more commonly as Amtrak, took over the operation of nearly all long-distance passenger trains in the U.S. the very next day, on May 1, 1971. Former Burlington Business Car 96, by this time, was operating on borrowed time once again. Its 1886 construction date and wood body were hidden under layers of steel, and Amtrak refused to certify it for continued operation. The stately business car took one final journey in August 1972 as part of an excursion pulled by Union Pacific steam locomotive number 8444. With car number 96 no longer able to operate, the Intermountain chapter decided it was time to retire the stately business car from service. A loan was arranged to the Colorado Railroad Museum, and former Burlington business car number 96 was trucked to the museum in late 1972. Unloaded with cranes and placed on museum tracks, the car became a popular museum display. Beginning in the late 1990s, a 5-year refurbishment process was undertaken for Car 96, completed in 2002. New carpet and upholstery, refinishing of the beautiful interior woodwork, repainting of ceilings as well as the car's exterior were all undertaken. New blinds were installed on the windows, and heating and air conditioning systems were reconditioned. With this work completed, the car was opened for guided tours on occasion. In 2006, car number 96 was formally donated by the Intermountain Chapter NRHS to the Colorado Railroad Museum. Moved to its current location on the museum's campus in 2007, permanent hookups were added for electricity, making it possible to air condition the car. Number 96 served as an occasional host for museum gatherings, such as donor thank you dinners and other special happenings. Starting in 2014, car number 96 served as a stationary car in support of the Polar Express train ride event at the museum. Inside, first-class passengers were treated to holiday carols as well as a rendition of the Hot Chocolate song and dance. This seasonal service continued throughout 2019, ending with the onset of the COVID pandemic in 2020 and major changes and upgrades to the event which followed. Even as the Polar Express performances were ongoing, museum leadership realized that Car 96 was urgently in need of cupboard storage. The elements were beginning to take a toll on the car after decades of outdoor storage and service. Fundraising was undertaken, and in 2023, the museum's very first covered storage location for rail vehicles, a canopy roof structure, was finally completed to protect the car, along with room for a second car. That same year, Car 96's exterior was freshly repainted, with relettering completed in 2024. A raised, accessible floor-level viewing platform is currently under construction, with completion anticipated in 2025. Plans call for this 1886 vintage business car to be joined on display by 1887 vintage Colorado Midland observation chair car number 111, once the exterior restoration of this wildflower special favorite from the long-vanished Midland is complete. Today, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy number 96 remains a favorite of guests who peer into the car seeking a glimpse of executive glamour. Rich in history and name, Business Car 96 is an American railroading icon with uniquely Colorado connections. Thanks for joining me today. Burlington Business Car number 96 is a lucky survivor that was continuously rebuilt and reinvented during its service life. Over the course of its long and varied career, it traveled across a broad swath of the Midwest and West, closing out its service years on excursions largely in and around Denver. I hope you've enjoyed learning about this ornate and specialized railroad business car today. And I also hope that your appreciation for Colorado's rich railroad heritage continues to grow with each and every tour of the museum's collections.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Commenting and sharing in particular may qualify as virtual engagements for important funding programs like the SCFD.